Okay, so now that we have our wave working and we know how to generate our monsters, the next most important part is to figure out how and when we are going to generate new waves of monsters. Now, this can be easier said than done, but it helps to think about when you would want to start the process of regenerating a wave of monsters. And even though I really don't get to play video games as much as I'd like anymore, I do remember that new waves of monsters tend to come when you're done killing all the old monsters. So that's what we want to do right now. And there's a built-in sort of hidden thing that you may not know about in Construct 2, and it's under the System menu, and it's called Compare Two Values. And you can find kind of any two values in the entire system or in the entire game and compare them against each other. And one of them is a property that all your objects will already have. And so I'll go monster, and it's called count. So monster has a count, basically just keeps track of how many monsters are in the layout right now. And so what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to teach my my waves of monsters to generate when the count of the existing monsters is less than or equal to 0, meaning none of them are on the layout anymore because I killed them all. Okay, so once that happens, what I want to do is I'll probably give myself a couple seconds. Like maybe I'll just go system and I'll add a wait in here. And maybe I want to wait a second, maybe two, before anything else happens. And then I want to start a new wave of monsters. Now, I've tried a few different ways of doing this, and there's ways to do it that are a little bit, that might be a little bit more cool from your standpoint that you can definitely figure out with loops and things like that. But the easiest and most efficient way that I found is to just restart the layout. So if I go under the System menu, I can just start typing, restart, and I can just restart the layout. But before I do that, I also want to increase, remember we're keeping track up here of how many waves we're generating. So what I want to do is I want to make my wave size go up by 1. So I'm going to go into System and I'm going to say add to wave, and I'm just going to add a value of 1. So wave 1 becomes wave 2, basically, is what this means right here. And I actually want to put that before, I put that in the wrong place. I actually want to put this here before the restart layout. So I wait a second, I add 1 to the wave, and then I restart the layout with a new value for wave of 2. So then I would be on wave 2, basically, and then 3, and so on and so forth. So what happens when I restart the layout? So that's when the fun starts to happen. So if I go on start of layout, the first thing I want to do is start thinking about how big I want my waves of monsters to be, because in the start of the layout is where you're going to set all that stuff up. And I don't want just like a static number. I can't just throw 100 in there, because every time I restart the layout, it'll just go 100, 100, 100, and every time my layout restarts, my wave's going to be the same size. I want my waves to be a different size every time. And what I'd like to do here, I figured this out beforehand, is I'd like to start with a wave size of 10, and then I would like it to go up by 10 each time I have a new wave. So what I want to do is I want to, I'll add an action here, and I'll go into System, and I want to set a value, and the value I'm going to set is the wave size, and I'm going to make that 10, but then each time the layout restarts, I'm going to multiply it by the value of wave, which goes up by 1, as you remember, each time we restart the layout. So as I'm finished here, you can see I'm adding 1 to wave, and then I'm restarting the layout. So let's say I first start the layout. I start with a value of my wave starts off at 1, and I want to make sure that my wave size, instead of 3 here, I'm going to set that back to 0. And my wave value, my wave number starts off at 1. So I start off with wave 1, and on start of layout, my wave size is set to 10 times wave, which is 1. 10 times 1 is 1, or 10 times 1 is 10, so I'm starting with the wave size of 10. Then I go down here, and every 2 seconds, as long as my wave size is greater than 0, I'm going to generate a new monster and subtract 1 from wave size until I get down to 0, making 10 monsters. And again, we want to go 1 less than what we actually need, because each layout is going to start with that extra monster that we talked about earlier. So I'm going to do 9 for that. And actually I can't do that. I actually have to go, I have to say 10 times wave, and then we'll go -1. And order of operations, we'll work that out. I don't need to use parentheses. So let's go ahead and try that out really quick. And I'll put that here. And I'll go ahead and pause this for a minute, and I'll kill all these monsters. So you can see here I'm about to kill this last monster. And it's going to be difficult to see, but if I kill him, you can see that's number 10, and my layout restarts. And my number of monsters was appropriate. I got the exact things that I wanted to see. The only problem with this right now is that I don't really know when the levels or the layout's restarting, because I don't have any indicators or banners or anything like that to tell me what I'm doing and where. So I'm going to show you a couple of cool tricks that we're going to add to make your game more fun to play. And it's like kind of like a built-in reward system for your players. So in this on start of layout thing here is where I'm going to do most of my work. But before we get into that, we have to add some stuff to our layout. And the first thing we're going to add, appropriately enough, is a beginning wave message. So I'm going to insert a new object. Again, you just right click in the layout, insert new object, and it's going to be a text object, and I'll put it here. And what you want to do is, if you haven't done this already, or if you weren't already thinking this, you want to go into the layers and make sure you have HUD selected. There's a bunch of settings like the parallax stuff that we did before on HUD. They're going to make this much more easy to manage if we have it on HUD. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make that a little bit bigger, and I'm going to call that instead of text here, we're going to rename that, and I'm going to call that let's say wave begin. So that's our beginning wave message, and then we're going to make an ending wave message, or a wave complete message. The other thing I want to do on wave begin, which I forgot, there's a couple little settings that you want to do. One is I want to set this to my regular font, which I've been using, Chiller. And I'm going to actually lock that to 72. And I want to make sure that my alignment's right. I'm going to line everything up in the center. And then the hotspot, which is the pivot point for these text boxes, I want to put that instead of in the top left. I'm going to put that in the center as well, because it makes it a little bit more easy for me to manage in terms of when I put it down in the location that I want it. So I'm going to do that, and I actually have to change the color to red, just like the other ones. And then I'm going to do the same thing with our wave end text. I'm just going to create a new text. I'm going to put it on the HUD, drag it up out here. I'm going to call it, let's go wave end. And so that's there, and that's going to be the same thing. I'm going to change it to Chiller. And I'm going to put it at 72. That's about as big as we can get it right now. Change the color to red. center everything up. There we go. Then I'm going to add something else special here. I'm going to add you win message for the end of the game. So let's do that. And kind of spun this thing around. There we go. And I'll drag that out a little bit. And I'll say red here. Chiller. This gets a little bit tedious, but it gets faster if you do it all at once. So it's a good idea. Let's go, where is it? I'm going to say, you win. And this one, I'm not going to set the text to anything later on. So I can actually, this one I can set my text directly in here. And so that's my you win text. And again, I want to make sure everything's centered up. Center. All right. So I think we got everything. I did notice that my game over is a little bright when I was in here, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that. That looks a little bit better. So with all that added to the layout, I'm going to now cut this video short because it's getting a little long. So on the next video, I'm going to show you how to begin and end your waves of enemies with style. And then I'm going to show you how to set it up so that when you beat a certain number of waves, you win the game and you get a nice you win message.